network attached storage this week as we kind of go through what different kind of storage types there are. So you can do is you can click on your little down thing here and kind of go to all of the bits that you've got here and go to storage. And what we're going to talk about is file storage and NAS. So network attached storage, if you've never done this before, you can kind of go over what they'll do. The sharing protocol, you can do thousands of instances mounted simultaneously, millions of clients, single ECS access. Now, lots of neat things that you can do along with these things depending on what you've got going. So object storage is really good for one thing, but file attached storage is a little bit more interesting when it goes through, especially when you take a look at it being attached to an operating system. So that's your big thing right there. NAS, pay as you go. If you've never set it up before, just go ahead and activate it. Pretty straightforward, just so you guys all know what that will look like. And then once it's all completed, take 1 to 5 minutes. You can go back to your console, and it's usually pretty quick on things like this. It's not a big service issue. So you go to your recently used, and it should give you what you've got here. And you can kind of figure out then what kind of NAS you want to have. General purpose, large capacity, pretty easy going. Extreme, so low latency, that's going to be for something where you're doing high capacity computing, maybe some protein folding, and then parallel file storage, suitable for high performance computing as well. So again, depending on what you've got, the big thing to make sure is that it gives you the performance that you need to have. Peak file system is 20 gigabits, where here it's a little bit bigger in terms of what it does, and then bandwidth, and then all the things that you would look for. It also gives you a price. So 35 Chinese yuan per gig per month, 1.8 Chinese, and so on. This is all in Chinese, and that's fine. But you can go ahead then and create whatever it is you want to create along the way as you go here, right? So you can go through and pick out any file systems that you've got. You can create one. You can create your permission group around that general purpose NAS. So you can give it a name, the network type. So we've got a VPC permission group. We can choose one and figure out how we want to deal with our permission group if we need to make one. Then we can turn around and go on what our resource plans are. How do we want to resource this? So you can detect space for multiple systems at a time. Again, it makes it a lot easier to actually manage how your data goes and how your data works along the way. So it will help you plan your data better, and that's important when you're working with this. You can do snapshots, because remember, you're attaching this to a virtual machine. You're attaching this to more than one virtual machine. So you can actually do some snapshots with this and manually create them, or you can actually automate your snapshot policy as you go through this. So you can set all this stuff up so that if you've got something that needs that daily backup, you can make that and you can automate it out, store it out for 7 days or however many days you want to be able to store and go back, depending on how often you take a look at it. You can migrate files from point A to point B. Usually with something like this, you can migrate files back and forth from systems, or from systems inside of Alibaba, or from inside to outside Alibaba, and so on. You can create transport orders. You can go ahead and set up all of the things that you want to do, whether it's online or offline migration. So they'll give you a data cube, migration jobs, and how your data is migrating along the way to kind of make things a little bit easier for you in your network attached storage. You can do file backups. You can completely back up your entire system, or just what you want to back up along the way. So that's kind of neat along the way as you kind of go doing file backups as this thing loads. I'm asking it to do an awful lot today. So you can actually just go ahead and set it up if you want to activate that service. You can do your standard lifecycle management. So you can either do it by policy or by frequency. So you can create a policy really where you're actually going to set up how you want to do your hierarchy. Low frequency, high frequency, what kind of storage type, and just depending on how often you're going to access it, what kind of file system you want to do this with. So we'll just do this as test. What kind of file system you want to do this with, if there's no options. And then directory path, if you want to have a directory path, and so on. Directory paths are great for mounting when you're mounting a drive, either Windows or for Linux. Low frequency storage, and basically how much your latency is. And that's important, especially if you're kind of overrunning your system. You need to know about that. And then you can set up a lifecycle strategy. Stuff that's not accessed all the time or stuff that's infrequently accessed, you can move it to a cheaper tier into OSS. You can migrate between this network attached style and your entire system. You can create data retrieval disks, and that's another thing that you can do. You can just go ahead and pick your system ID. You can go ahead and pick whatever you want to do with it, and then go ahead and do a directory path on it. So you can just go ahead and set it up so it will data retrieve. Then you can actually do some performance monitoring and kind of see how it's going. Again, I don't have anything set up. And then you can also do some log analysis, which is actually really kind of important. We don't have the SLS log service open yet, so if we wanted to do this, we would have to activate that service first. And then we can just go ahead and overview audits. Audits are important. So that's essentially what you're going to do with your network attached storage. You can go ahead and then just sit down here and create a general purpose one, and it will bring up all the things that you would ever want to know about creating it. Where do you want to create it? And note that you've got a minimal amount of things and places that you can actually do. There's places in here that you can that are not in other zones. So if you wanted to set this up in Virginia, and you can do it across zones, you can do zone A or zone B. You can do it only as a performance NAS. You can't do it as anything else. If you do it in China, you can only do it as performance and so on. But if you do it in Hangzhou, you can get capacity or performance. So again, depending on where you are, will determine what kind of network attached storage you're going to get. You can do it as NSF for Windows or SMB for Linux. You can do the encryption type, again, if you want to do a managed key or if you want to provide your own keys. Data backups, if you want to enable that backup service. That's actually pretty good because that will help you out if you ever get ransomware in the cloud. That's an ugly situation right then and there. So you don't want that. So definitely go through and set that data backup to enable. And then we already have our VPC, and we can select our VPC that we had built previously if we had saved it. And then if we want to, we can actually put it off a virtual switch to reduce and minimize any kind of latency that we've got. And then you can determine how much you wanted this to cost per hour, right? So we're actually got a pretty low cost per hour because I haven't selected a VPC and there's no VPC available in the region. So I would actually have to go and create my virtual private cloud in Virginia Zone A to kind of start getting into that. So there's some dependencies here that you really want to check out. So when you go and you make your general purpose NAS this week, pick an interesting spot, pick a place that has different things and tinker around with it and kind of figure out how you feel about it. You don't have to select a VPC. But I would just go ahead and screen cap this page for me. And then that's what you will submit is this. Don't worry about your configuration cost, but just go kind of take a look at it and see what other things you can get out of this as you do a network attached storage. And remember, that's your big thing. OSS is just general purpose storage you can do a lot of things with it. With your NAS, you're actually thinking about this as like your data drive on your hard drive for your computer. So this is going to directly attach to all your virtual machines, but you can move data back and forth between your NAS and your OSS as you go through the process. And it's really just a matter of capability and capacity, depending on which one you want to go and how you want to manage that data movement and how you want to manage the storage of that data. So that's all there is to just general purpose network attached storage, pay as you go. And that's it for this lecture. Remember that this is all you need to turn in, and it doesn't have to be anything special, just where you're at and what kind of file system you chose, but just screen cap this whole thing for me. If you want to, here we'll just do that, and we'll go ahead and we'll capture that so we've got it handy. And you can kind of see my little countdown clock, and then that's all you got to turn in. That's all you got to turn in is that screen cap. All right, guys, thanks so much. I will see you in the next lecture.